She tied the red ribbon too tight, then stopped. Her hands stayed there, fingers stiff, breath held. For a moment, she thought she might cry. Instead, she loosened the knot and smoothed it flat, just as she always did. Careful, quiet, alone. No one was watching. That was the hardest part. Evelyn Song stepped back and studied the window. Pine boughs framed the glass, green and sharp with scent. The ribbon caught the lamplight, bright as a heartbeat. She nodded once, as if someone had agreed with her, and turned away. Outside, families were already heading home. Inside, she finished decorating a room that would soon belong to no one. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of Frost Creek, where the dirt road thinned into snow and silence. December pressed close against the walls, slipping cold fingers through every crack. Evelyn moved slowly, her steps soft on the worn floorboards. She had learned long ago how to make herself small in quiet places. At 25, she carried herself with a stillness that came from practice, not peace. Her dark hair was pinned neatly back. Her pale blue dress was clean and pressed, though the cuffs showed careful mending. Over it all, she wore a white silk cheongam, its embroidery faint but precise. It was the last thing she owned that had belonged to her mother. She adjusted the chalk tray, straightened the desks, smoothed the map of the territories on the wall. Each motion had meaning. Each one delayed the moment she would have to leave. Through the frosted window, she watched the town pass by. Mothers called their children in from the cold. Fathers carried bundles of firewood, boots crunching steady and sure. Doors opened. Warm light spilled onto the snow. Laughter rose, then vanished behind walls that kept it safe. Evelyn looked away. On her desk lay a folded paper, edges soft from being handled too often. She picked it up and opened it again, though she knew every line by heart. Crayon figures stood in a circle beneath a yellow sun. Stick arms linked together. At the center was a woman with dark hair and a smile too big for her face. My teacher and my friends. The words read, written crooked but proud. Evelyn traced the letters with one finger. The love in them was real. That was what made it ache. She slid the drawing into her desk drawer, on top of many others just like it. 7 years of winters. 7 years of watching children leave for Christmas while she stayed behind. She had learned to accept that kind of love, close, bright, and temporary. When the light outside finally faded, she lit the oil lamp in the front window. The flame caught, steady and warm. From the street, the schoolhouse looked welcoming, alive. No one was coming. She wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders and took one last look around. The pine boughs, the ribbon, the empty desks waiting for voices that would not return for weeks. Then she blew out the lamp. The cold hit her face the moment she stepped outside. Snow creaked under her boots. Somewhere far off, a hymn drifted through the air, carried thin by the wind. She lowered her head and started toward her rented room above the general store. She did not see the man on horseback at the far end of the street. Caleb Rowland sat still in the saddle, reins loose in his gloved hands. He had watched the light go out. He always did. For 3 winters now, he had passed the schoolhouse just as evening fell. For 3 winters, he had seen the same small figure moving inside with quiet care, decorating, cleaning, leaving alone. His hat was pulled low, shadowing a face lined by sun and loss. Snow dusted his coat. The horse shifted beneath him, impatient to head home. Caleb turned away at last. His ranch lay 5 miles west, beyond the cottonwood stand and the frozen creek. A big house waited there, well-kept and hollow. His children, Nora and Luke, would be inside with Mrs. Pike, the housekeeper, setting the table just as they always did. Everything in its place. Nothing out of order. Nothing warm. As he rode, the sound of hooves marked time with his thoughts. He told himself the teacher's life was none of his concern. He told himself loneliness was something a person learned to carry. He had been carrying it since the winter his wife died. The next morning, Frost Creek stirred early. Smoke rose from chimneys. Bells jingled as wagons rolled toward the general store. December 22nd brought errands and plans, small comforts before the holiday pause. Evelyn stood at the counter, counting coins with care. One orange sat wrapped in tissue paper, a spool of brown thread, a tin of tea. Small things. Enough. "That all, Miss Song?" asked Mr. Lee, the shopkeeper, his voice gentle as always. "Yes, thank you," she said, reaching for her parcel. The door opened behind her, letting in a rush of cold and sound. Boots, laughter, children's voices. "Miss Song!" A small body collided with her legs. Luke Roland clung to her skirt, grinning wide, peppermint already staining his lips. Behind him, Nora stepped forward, composed and bright-eyed, holding herself very straight. Evelyn's smile came easy then, real. "Hello," she said softly. "Are you ready for Christmas?" Before the children could answer, a tall man approached, hat in hand. Caleb Rowland stopped a few steps away, his gaze steady but cautious. "Miss Song," he said, "may I speak with you?" Quote. Something in his voice made the room feel suddenly smaller. Evelyn nodded, her fingers tightening around her parcel as the children watched, hopeful and waiting. Mr. Lee turned away without being asked, suddenly very interested in a crate of dried beans. The children fell quiet, as if they sensed something important was about to happen. Caleb shifted his weight. "I won't keep you long," he said. "My household would like to invite you for Christmas. Dinner, just the day." Evelyn blinked. Once. Then again. "That's very kind," she said carefully, "but I couldn't impose." Luke tugged at her skirt. "Please," he said, voice small but fierce. "We got a tree." "A big one." Nora nodded. "I've been practicing carols," she added. "I want to sing them for you." Caleb looked at his children, then back at Evelyn. "It just seems wrong," he said quietly, "for the woman who looks after every child in this town to spend Christmas alone." Heat rose to Evelyn's face. She hated how easily he had named it. She opened her mouth to refuse again, out of habit if nothing else, but the words tangled. She thought of her narrow room above the store, the thin walls, the orange she would eat slowly, saving each slice, the long day ahead with nothing to mark its passing. She looked at Nora's steady eyes. There was no pity there, only hope. "I would be honored," Evelyn said at last, her voice barely carried. "Thank you." Caleb's shoulders eased, just a fraction. "Christmas Eve morning," he said. 9 o'clock. I'll come with the wagon." The children beamed. Luke whooped before remembering himself. Evelyn gathered her parcel and watched them leave, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not joy. Not yet. But the ache felt different now. The wagon ride took them west, into open country glazed with snow. The sky hung pale and wide above the plains. Evelyn sat beside Caleb, her carpet bag at her feet, hands folded in her lap. The silence between them was easy. The wagon wheels creaked. The horses breathed steam into the cold. "This land's been in my family a long time," Caleb said at last. "My father built the house I added on when I married." "It's beautiful country," Evelyn replied. "My wife thought so," he said. "She passed 3 years ago." "I'm sorry," Evelyn said. "So am I." They said nothing more. The ranch came into view over a low rise. The house stood solid and square, smoke rising from the chimney. A barn and corral flanked it, everything orderly and well kept. From a distance it looked like a picture pinned to the world. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of pine. Photographs lined the walls. A woman with kind eyes and dark hair smiled out from every frame. Curtains sewn with careful hands filtered the light. A sampler hung over the hearth. "Love makes a house a home." Luke grabbed Evelyn's hand. "Come see the tree." It stood tall in the parlor, decorated with paper stars and dried berries. Presents lay beneath it, arranged with care. Everything was right. and everything felt held in place, as if afraid to move. Mrs. Pike appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Miss Song," she said, "welcome." Quote. The guest room upstairs was neat and spare. A quilt lay folded on the bed. More photographs watched from the dresser. "They'll be glad for you," Mrs. Pike said softly before leaving. Evelyn unpacked slowly. 2 dresses, a book of poems. She set them away and went to the window. Below, Caleb stood in the barn doorway, one hand braced against the frame, shoulders bowed, as if against a wind only he could feel. Understanding settled over her like snow. That evening, the kitchen filled with warmth. Flour dusted the table. Butter softened in a bowl. Nora read from a worn recipe card, brow furrowed. "We cream the butter first," Evelyn said, "then the sugar." Luke volunteered to watch the oven, solemn as a judge. Caleb passed through more than once, pretending errands. Evelyn kept working. Teaching. Filling the room with quiet purpose. Later, she mended a torn curtain while telling a story. Luke sprawled at her feet. Nora listened close. "My aunt once sat 3 nights with wolves outside her cabin," Evelyn said. She kept the fire bright and sang to keep her courage. Quote, "Were you scared?" Nora asked. "I wasn't born yet," Evelyn said with a smile. But she said fear couldn't live where faith did. Caleb stood in the doorway listening. Dinner that night felt almost normal. Laughter came easier. When Caleb thanked Evelyn for fixing the curtain, she waved it away. "It wasn't nothing," he said. "Not here." After the children slept, they sat by the fire. Shadows danced. "You loved her," Evelyn said of his wife. "I did," Caleb replied. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm honoring her or hiding in her memory." "You're not weak for grieving," Evelyn said, "but staying frozen can hurt too." He looked at her then. "You understand loneliness." "Yes." Christmas morning dawned quiet. Gifts were opened. A pair of uneven mittens were pressed into Evelyn's hands. "They're perfect," she said, voice thick. Later, as she read aloud, Luke fell asleep against her. Nora leaned close. Caleb watched. Something broke open in his face. He stood suddenly. "I need air." That night, under a sky sharp with stars, he told her he was afraid of forgetting, afraid of wanting. And Evelyn listened. The house felt different the morning after Christmas. Not colder, not warmer, just quieter in a way that carried weight. Evelyn noticed it as she dressed. The stillness pressed in, thick as the frost on the window. Downstairs, plates were set without conversation. Chairs scraped softly. Caleb's place at the table sat empty. "He left before dawn," Mrs. Pike said when Evelyn asked. Her mouth was tight. "Said there was work in the far pasture." Evelyn nodded. She understood running. She had done it for years, just in smaller ways. The children ate slowly. Luke pushed food around his plate. Nora watched the door as if willing it to open. "He'll be back," Evelyn said gently. Nora nodded, though her eyes stayed guarded. The day passed in careful politeness. Evelyn helped with small chores, folded linens, read with the children, laughed when expected. All the while she felt the clock moving forward, steady and unforgiving. That evening she packed. The carpet bag lay open on the bed. She folded her dresses with care, as if neatness could soften what was coming. She placed her book of poems on top, then hesitated. For a long moment she simply sat on the edge of the mattress, hands folded in her lap. She had not planned to stay beyond the holiday. She reminded herself of that. She had accepted a kindness, nothing more. Anything else was dangerous. A small sound reached her ears, soft, broken. She followed it down the hall. Luke's door stood ajar. Moonlight spilled across the floor. He lay tangled in his blankets, face wet with tears. Evelyn knelt beside the bed and gathered him up without thinking. His body fit against hers like he had always known where to go. "It was a bad dream," he sobbed. "Don't leave." "I'm here," she whispered, rocking him. "You're safe." His small hands clenched her sleeve. "Don't leave like Mama did." The words struck deep, sharp and sudden. "I won't," Evelyn said, though she didn't know if it was true. She left, Luke cried. "And Papa never lets anyone stay." "But I want you to. Nora wants you. We need you." Quote. Evelyn closed her eyes, a breath caught in the doorway. She looked up and saw Caleb standing there, coat still on, hat in his hand. His face had gone pale. He had heard everything. Their eyes met over Luke's head. The moments stretched. Then Caleb turned and walked away. The next morning came gray and heavy. Evelyn carried her bag downstairs. Caleb stood by the wagon, reins in hand, gaze fixed somewhere beyond the yard. Mrs. Pike crossed her arms. "You're both fools," she said flatly. Nora appeared at the top of the stairs. When she saw the bag, her face crumpled. She ran down and clung to Evelyn's arm. "No," she said. "You can't go." Luke followed, wrapping himself around Evelyn's waist. "Please." Caleb spoke, voice strained. "Children, Miss Song has her own life." "You never want anyone to stay," Nora cried, tears spilling free. "Mama died and you closed up. You stopped letting anyone close, even us." Caleb flinched. "I'm protecting you," he said. "We don't need protecting," Nora said. "We need a family." She turned to Evelyn, eyes fierce and wet. "You love us, don't you?" The room went still. Evelyn's heart hammered. She had never spoken those words aloud. Never let herself. "Yes," she said at last. "I do." Mrs. Pike stepped forward. "Mary was my dearest friend," she said to Caleb. "Her last wish was that this house wouldn't turn into a tomb. And here you are, letting life walk back out the door." Caleb's breath shook. He turned and went inside, into the parlor. He stood before his wife's photograph for a long time. "I don't know how to do this," he said to the quiet room. "I don't know how to love and not lose again." At last he lifted the photograph from the wall and carried it to his study. He set it gently on the desk. "I'll always love you," he whispered, "but I can't live like this." When he stepped back outside, his eyes were red but clear. "Don't go," he said to Evelyn. "Please." He stopped a few feet away. "I've been afraid of wanting something again, but my children need more than survival. They need joy." He met her gaze. "I need you, not to replace my wife, never that, but to build something new, with us." Quote. Evelyn's composure broke. Tears spilled free. "I've spent years loving children who weren't mine," she said, telling myself that was enough. "You deserve more," Caleb said. She looked at the faces around her, the children clinging close, Mrs. Pike's steady nod, the house behind them, waiting. "I already have more," she whispered. Luke hugged her tight. Nora pressed close. Caleb wrapped his arms around them all, awkward and fierce and right. "Will you marry me?" he asked, "when you're ready." "Yes," she said, no hesitation. Luke looked up. "Does that mean you'll be our mama?" "If you'll have me," Evelyn said. They nodded together, and the house, at last, breathed. The days after her decision felt unreal, as if Evelyn had stepped into a life that had been quietly waiting for her all along. The ranch woke differently now. Doors opened more often. Voices carried farther down the halls. Even the floors seemed to creak with less complaint. Evelyn noticed it in small ways first. Luke whistling while he dressed. Nora humming while she read. Mrs. Pike setting an extra place at the table without pausing to think. Caleb moved through the house with careful attention, as if afraid the warmth might vanish if he startled it. He spoke gently. He listened more than he talked. Sometimes Evelyn caught him watching her with the children, his expression open and uncertain, like a man learning a new language. They did not speak of marriage again. Not yet. There was no need to rush words that carried such weight. That afternoon, snow began to fall again. Thick, slow flakes that softened the world. Evelyn stood at the window, watching the pasture fade into white. "Miss Song," Luke said from behind her. She turned. He hesitated, then corrected himself. "Evelyn." The name sounded different here, fuller. "Yes? Will you help me with my letters?" She smiled. "Of course." They sat at the table together. Luke's tongue poked out as he concentrated. Nora joined them, correcting gently when he struggled. Evelyn guided his hand, patient and steady. Caleb watched from the doorway. The sight filled his chest with something close to pain. Later, when the children went outside to build a crooked snow fort, Caleb approached Evelyn quietly. "I meant what I said," he told her. "About family." "I know," she replied. "I don't expect you to give up your work," he added quickly. "The school needs you." She met his gaze. "And I need them, but I don't need to be alone anymore." Relief crossed his face. That evening, they ate together by lamplight. Conversation flowed easily now, no longer forced. Luke talked about the fort. Nora read aloud from her new book. Mrs. Pike laughed, a sound Evelyn had not heard before. After supper, Caleb cleared his throat. "There's something I should show you." He led Evelyn to the study. Mary's photograph sat on the desk, not hidden, not central. "Just present. I won't take it down," Caleb said, "but I won't let it hold the whole house anymore." Evelyn nodded. "That feels right." They stood there a moment, close but not touching. "I'm afraid," he admitted. "So am I," she said. They shared a quiet smile. That night, Evelyn lay awake in the guest room, listening to the house settle around her. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel empty. It felt full of possibility. The next morning brought clear skies and cold air sharp enough to sting. Caleb hitched the wagon early. "I'll drive you back to town," he said, "to collect your things." Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. The ride felt different than before, easier. The road no longer led away from something but toward it. In Frost Creek, she climbed the narrow stairs to her rented room. The space felt smaller than she remembered, the bed narrow, the walls thin. She packed quickly. There was not much to take. As she closed the door for the last time, she paused. She touched the frame lightly. Then she turned and went down the stairs. Caleb waited below, hat in hand. "Ready?" he asked. "Yes." When they returned to the ranch, the children ran out to meet them, faces bright. Evelyn stepped down from the wagon and felt, for the first time, like she was coming home. That evening, as snow began to fall again, Evelyn lit the lamp in her window. This time, the light was for her. Winter settled in earnest after that, slow and steady, as if the land itself had decided to stay a while. Snow stacked along the fences. The creek froze solid. Mornings began with frost on the windows, and evenings ended with firelight and shared stories. Evelyn returned to the schoolhouse after the holiday break, riding into town each morning with Caleb when weather allowed, or alone when it did not. The children noticed the change first. "You smile more now," Lily May said one afternoon, her small voice matter of fact. Evelyn paused, chalk in hand. "Do I?" Lily nodded, "like you're not waiting anymore." The words stayed with her all the way home. At the ranch, life found a new rhythm. Evelyn taught Luke his letters by the hearth. She helped Nora with her sums at the long kitchen table. She read aloud in the evenings while Caleb repaired tack or sharpened tools nearby, listening even when he pretended not to. Sometimes, the weight of what they were building pressed in on her. In quiet moments, doubt crept close. One night, after the children were asleep, Evelyn stood alone in the parlor. Mary's photograph caught the lamplight. The woman's eyes seemed kind, knowing. "I'm not here to take your place," Evelyn whispered. "I hope you know that." The room remained still, but the knot in her chest eased. Caleb found her there, hands in his pockets. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said. "I know," she replied. "I'm just learning how not to." They stood side by side, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Neither pulled away. As weeks passed, the town began to notice. Whispers softened into smiles. Invitations followed. A place was made for Evelyn that had nothing to do with duty. She was no longer just the teacher. One afternoon, a storm rolled in fast. Snow fell heavy and blinding. Evelyn arrived home late, chilled through. Caleb met her at the door, concern etched deep. "I worried," he said simply. The word warmed her more than the fire ever could. That night, Luke woke from another bad dream. Evelyn went to him as she always did now. She sang softly until his breathing slowed. From the hallway, Caleb listened. Fear still lived in him, fear of loss, fear of loving too deeply. But each night, it loosened its grip. Near the end of winter, Caleb spoke at last. "When spring comes," he said one evening, staring into the fire, "I'd like to set a date." Evelyn's heart stuttered. "For the wedding?" He nodded, nervous as a boy. "Yes," she said, "I'd like that." They did not kiss. They did not rush. They let the promise settle between them, strong and sure. That night, Evelyn lay awake, listening to the house breathe around her. The wind rattled the eaves. Snow brushed the roof. She was no longer an observer of other people's lives. She was inside one now. And for the first time in years, she slept without holding herself apart. Spring came slowly to the plains, as if winter needed time to loosen its grip. Snow thinned along the fence lines. The creek groaned and cracked, then began to move again. Mud replaced ice, and the air carried the first faint promise of grass. Evelyn noticed how the light changed before anything else. It lingered longer in the evenings. It found its way into corners that had stayed dark all winter. The house changed with it. Windows were opened on clear days. Fresh curtains replaced the old ones, sewn carefully by Evelyn, at the kitchen table while Nora helped pin the hems. Luke tracked mud everywhere, and was scolded only lightly. Mrs. Pike pretended to complain, but her eyes shone. Caleb worked longer hours outside now, mending fences, preparing fields. Yet he always came in before supper. Always. The wedding plans were simple. There was never any question of making them grand. Evelyn did not want spectacle. Caleb did not want attention. What they wanted was solid. Real. Something that would last when the seasons turned again. The town offered more than they expected. Mrs. Lee insisted on flowers from her greenhouse. Mr. Harper volunteered benches. The children at the school whispered excitedly, watching Evelyn with new eyes. Not distant now. Proud. On the morning of the wedding, Evelyn stood in the small bedroom that had become hers. Sunlight spilled across the quilt. Her dress hung ready. Simple, clean, white. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she had changed her face, but because her eyes were no longer guarded. Nora knocked softly. "You're needed," she said, trying very hard to sound grown. Evelyn smiled. "I'm ready." They married outside, beneath the cottonwood trees near the creek. The ground was still soft, the air cool and bright. Caleb waited with the children at his side, hat in hand, shoulders straight but tense. When he saw Evelyn walking toward him, something in his chest finally eased. The ceremony was brief. Words spoken plainly, promises made without flourish. When Caleb said her name, it sounded like a vow all its own. Afterward, there was food and laughter. Children ran. The town lingered longer than expected, as if reluctant to leave the warmth they had witnessed. As the sun lowered, the crowd thinned. Mrs. Pike shooed the last guests away and stood back, hands on her hips, satisfied. "About time," she said. That night, the house glowed. Evelyn lit the lamps, one by one, not out of habit now, but out of joy. The rooms filled with light that belonged to her. Later, when the children were asleep and the house finally quiet, Evelyn and Caleb sat on the porch steps. The air smelled of damp earth and new beginnings. "I used to think surviving was enough," Caleb said. "And now?" Evelyn asked. "Now I know better." He reached for her hand. She took it without hesitation. Inside, the house settled around them. No longer a museum, no longer a refuge, a home. Winter would come again someday. They both knew that. Loss might visit, fear might whisper, but they would face it together. And that made all the difference.